Nick Nanos is a market and public opinion research leader.
The polling data coming out is wild. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we have tons of new polls. They all seem to be dropping at the exact same moment here, and they're all bad for Mark Carney. We got a handful of different panels here. It's funny to listen to these pundits talk with this polling data coming out, which contradicts what they're saying. Let's jump into this. So we've got this coming from Main Street, BC poll. This is the first BC poll since John Rustad stepped down. And look at this, the Conservatives are leading. And that's even with a -2. You also notice OBC, this is 1BC. They were gaining ground. That party has since imploded. There's kerfuffle going on there. I guess Dallas Brody now has control of the party again. There was a young staffer saying some pretty wild stuff on X, and she didn't like it. She wanted that person fired. And instead, the rest of the party revolted on her and fired her. And then now they've left, and now she's taken back over the party, but it's a party of one. So essentially, 1BC is done now. So we'll probably expect to see this percentage getting divided here. I don't know how that will get split, hopefully mostly to the Conservatives. Now for federal polling, what do we have? A new liaison strategies poll. There, the Conservatives and the Liberals are tied, 38 apiece. You'll see the Liberals have dropped 3 and the Conservatives have gone up 2. Also the Bloc and the Greens picking up a couple points. You'll notice too, Shreyatee's pointing out, technically this is the first ever Conservative lead in a liaison poll since they started federal polling. Well, technically not a lead, but first tie. They've always been trailing the Liberals since liaison started polling. We've also got this one from Nick Nanos. Nanos poll 36.3% for the Liberals, down 2.1%, and Conservatives at 35.4, down a tiny bit, 0.4. NDP has gained a little bit, 0.6. The rest mostly flat here. You know things are bad for Mark Carney if the poll is nearly tied on a Nick Nanos poll. The way he polls, or how he polls, it always leans more liberal. Now, I'm not sure why it leans liberal, but Nick Nanos does receive a lot of money from the federal government. You can see here almost 300,000, 222, 200, 179, etc. And there's 7 pages here. I don't know how many of these are Nanos, a bunch of them. Still going 85, 83,000, 60,000, 59,000. You get it here. Tons of money going to Nick Nanos research for doing federal polling. This isn't a smoking gun that he favors the Liberals, but it's something to think about. Other polling data, we got this one from Angus Reid. The PQ is up to 90 seats, plus 87. PLQ, the Liberals, 25, as Shreyatees has it modeled out here. The Parti Québécois, the separatist group, majority government is projected. A huge separation movement is pushing from all fronts. It's not just Quebec. It's coming from Alberta. It's coming from Saskatchewan. I can tell you there's a bunch of British Columbians who would love to merge with Alberta and Saskatchewan and separate, but there's too many leftists that are around here, especially around Vancouver and Victoria. There's too many NDP as well. So it'll never happen in BC, but either way, this is a lot of pressure Mark Carney's facing on all fronts here. Like, this is a massive movement here in Quebec. I mean, look at the polling here, 40% to 18 to 16 to 13 to 10. What we're seeing here with all these polls, 38 to 38, and the Nanos one is basically tied as well almost. Mark Carney, his who cares comments, people realize this guy's a globalist banker who doesn't care. He told us he doesn't care because he's rich. He doesn't care. And he's not getting a deal with Donald Trump. And people put it together like, oh, this guy doesn't care. It went all over national television. He's not getting a deal. He said he would handle Trump. He said he knows how the world works. That's what he said at the start. He knows how the world works. And I think he does. But the problem is people didn't gauge the man's ethics. Was he a man of honor? Is he a man of courage? Is he a patriot? He is none of those things. He's not fighting for Canada. Has he even lived in Canada in the last 10 years? From all the rumors I hear, him and his wife were living down in New York, Eurasia Group, Evan Solomon, all of them down there. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just rumor. But before then, he was in England. So, I mean, has he even lived in Canada in the past 10 years? He's got a house in Ottawa, but that doesn't say anything. What we're seeing here is the collapse of Mark Carney's support. People realizing he's not going to get a deal. Looking at this Nanos poll, you see -2% for the Liberals. We have the same poll here, Polling Canada, listing this as -8 for the Liberals. I'm not sure if they're going off of a different poll. Maybe it's further back, but either way, it doesn't matter. Carney's numbers are cratering here. Now, if you only watch mainstream media as your source of news, then you wouldn't know what's really going on. You would think the opposite. Listen to this.
Kathleen brings us down, Corey, memory lane a year ago when Justin Trudeau was still prime minister for a few more weeks. When you look back on this year, what defines it politically for you?
Well, I think probably the biggest story of the year is, you can frame it one of two ways, the Liberal resurgence or the collapse of what looked like an absolute certainty for the Conservatives in the election campaign. And I think that's the biggest story. It's probably, if we look back historically, the biggest reversal of fortunes in Canadian political history. Mm-hmm. And, you don't see that very often. That's the biggest, I think that's the biggest story. And to Kathleen's point, what we're seeing now, It's not a polling problem for the Conservatives. It's a polling problem for Poilievre.
Yeah.
And, the party is quite popular by historical standards.
If people didn't like Poilievre that much, then the polling results wouldn't be what we see here today. What this is Corey Tenecki is Doug Ford's campaign manager. He's trying to get Doug Ford primed to take over the Conservative Party. They're hoping Poilievre gets kicked out or thrown out or steps down or whatever it may be, so Doug Ford can step in as Mr. Leader of the opposition. It's not going to happen, and we're not supporting Doug Ford around here. I don't think any of the creators I know will support Doug Ford. We all don't like Doug Ford because he's a fake conservative. He's a charlatan, he's a snake, and he's an opportunist. He's not an honorable, incredible guy.
On most of the issues that are actually driving those polling numbers, the Conservatives have a substantial issue advantage. And I think it'd be very high in the polls, if not for Poilievre's very weak leadership numbers. And this is what's driving the floor crossing. And ultimately, I think
that is not what's driving the floor crossing. Chris D'Entremont had a temper tantrum from not getting the deputy speaker role. Michael Ma has many connections to China. Let's be honest here. Come on.
What will determine his fate? Either Poilievre, figures out how to soften his image and bring those personal numbers up, or he's going to have a really difficult year.
What defines this year of politics for you, Scott?
Well, it is hard to lay off what is, as Corey mentioned, a truly historic reversal of fortunes. Mark Carney comes out of nowhere, never held elected office, takes over the leadership in a walk, which wasn't expected to be a walk, and then wins government.
What they fail to point out is Pierre Poilievre was running against Justin Trudeau. Everyone hated Justin Trudeau. He's arrogant, he's smug, and everyone realized that. Once Trudeau stepped down, the numbers switched immediately, and it was then a level playing field again. It wasn't this 20-point swing. Pierre was now running against somebody new, and the battle was tight the entire way. It swung because Trudeau left. People didn't like Trudeau. It's not that Poilievre fumbled the ball suddenly and just lost it all.
Against an opponent who was supposed to crush everybody. So that's one hell of a story. But to me...
He didn't go against the opponent, though. That's Trudeau. He didn't have an election against Trudeau. This is all dishonest what they're saying here. And I'm going to bring up a clip next of James Moore pointing out exactly this.
A big story, and one of the underlying causes of all of that phenomenon, Donald Trump and tariff policy toward Canada. I mean, he has literally declared Canada an enemy, and he's moved aggressively to try to undermine not just free trade, but some of the tenets of our economy. And so we've seen that drive our politics in 2025, that drove that federal election. One of the dynamics that created so many doubts about Mr. Poilievre and his leadership was whether he was up to that moment. And by wide enough margin to hand Mark Carney a near majority, Canadians concluded that he was not up to it. And again, it's Trump that looms in the background. And sneak peek, Trump is still there for us.
Well, the reason why Mark Carney won is because they use fear to scare Canadians, and Mark Carney had the perfect resume for anyone who's not paying attention. Central banker for 2 G7 countries. Okay, yeah, he'll be a stable hand. That's what happened. They used fear. They used his resume. People didn't look into the guy and didn't read his book Values. If any average Canadian read that book, they'd be like, no, this guy can't be prime minister. Let's jump over to this panel here. We got James Moore telling it straight here.
And he was pushed at a number of different points. Do you think he took enough responsibility for the floor crossings to the Liberals?
I mean, yeah, I would encourage everybody to watch the whole interview. As always, Vashti does a good job, and Pierre Poilievre has a lot to say. Look, the 2025, make no mistake, was a tough year for the Conservative Party. It started the way the Conservative Party wanted it to start, which is 20 points up, and it ended where we are right now. But look, Pierre Poilievre is going to have a moment of reckoning at the Conservative Party conference, and by the way, I think he's going to win. I think Conservative Party members want him to continue as leader. The vast majority of Canadians in their lifetime are never members of a political party. And the people who are members of the Conservative Party right now are people who joined the party because they believed in Pierre Poilievre's leadership. They like the way in which he carries himself, and they really hope that he will pivot from being an opposition leader to being a proposition leader, somebody who proposes the ideas that are necessary for the country moving forward. So I think he'll survive his leadership review at the party conference. And I think it's mostly because Conservative Party members have deep respect for him and the work ethic that he shows and the grind that he's shown in trying to build the party, record fundraising, the best level of support that the party has had in terms of raw votes since 1988. Mm-hmm. But Conservative Party members are also deeply disappointed with the fact that we didn't win and that the party didn't get over the top and succeed in getting a government mandate from the Canadian people. So it's a time for soul searching, I think, for a lot of Conservative Party members about how does the party position itself, how does it pivot to move move forward and how do we become more successful in the next election campaign. And obviously that in our system revolves a lot around the question of leadership and whether or not Pierre Poilievre can make that transition from being an opposition leader to being a prime minister in waiting.
If we reflect back to what Pierre Poilievre was saying in his interview with Global News with Donna Friesen, anytime he talked about the reason he runs, bringing hope to Canadians, boom, they cut it off. They cut it off. There was a lot of comments on that video. Isn't there a longer video? Isn't there a full video? I can't find one. There's no live stream of that interview. They just cut it how they wanted to cut it. Maybe they release a longer one later, but that's what they put out. Looking on Global News YouTube channel here, there's the video. This is the video, 15 minutes and 50 seconds. There is no other video here, no longer form video. And if you look, say if it was live stream, which they don't usually do that much of, but you can see here, the last one they did was 4 days ago, was Doug Ford and Mark Carney. So there is no other longer video. They selectively cut that video to create a narrative to smear Pierre Poilievre. They didn't want his words getting out, so they selectively edited that video. It's nasty what they did. And one final thing to note about this whole Global News situation, they did this hit piece on Pierre on the West Block. And as soon as you load the video up, which I didn't show in the original video, who's hosting this? It's Ben Mulroney. Ben Mulroney's taken over temporarily. I believe there's a maternity leave or something for about 8 or 9 months or so. He's hosting this show for the past while now, and likely they've pulled in a lot more conservatives as well as more swing voters, and then they run this hit piece while they know conservatives are watching.
Official leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, sat down last week with our global anchor, Donna Friesen. From how, given the chance, he'd push through an Alberta, British Columbia pipeline to the aftermath of party deserters, here's that interview.
Mr. Paul.
And then it jumps into it. I was really disappointed that Ben Mulroney wasn't interviewing Pierre Poilievre. I thought we were going to get a real interview. Instead, we got this hit piece nonsense. And back to James' point here, conservatives are going to vote Pierre Poilievre back in as leader at the convention, and it's going to be a landslide. They know he's the guy bringing the party up. And sure, he's been through some tough times here, losing his riding, a full onslaught here from the media. They're spending over $1 million a day to attack the guy and try to get rid of him. That's why they keep doing this. They're trying it at Christmas time. It's like a coordinated effort. I wouldn't be surprised if they have backroom meetings where a bunch of these media managers get together and say, okay, we're going to attack them all in the same week, so it hits Canadians all at the same time. These people are nasty.
Use the word a couple times, pivot, right? And transition. And it feels like that was ultimately Pierre Poilievre's downfall, unable to pivot from how he is in the House of Commons, coming off of those decisions, blowing that 20-point lead that the Conservatives had in the poll. Whether this interview or not in the last little bit, why do you feel that Conservatives might feel that it could be different this time around when it still feels like there is a lack of a concrete plan?
It's first of all, look, concrete plans are put before the public when the election starts, right?
I'm glad he just called him on that. What concrete plan do you need right now? He keeps saying what he plans to do. He came out in that interview and said, I will put a pipeline through. Oh, but don't you need Indigenous consultation? Yeah, I'll consult them and then I'll make the decision. What more plan do you need?
There's a reason why it's said that being the opposition leader is the toughest job in politics, because your job is to oppose the government. It's not always to propose to be the alternative. And the opportunity and the window of opportunity to present yourself as the alternative government is the election campaign. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for someone when you're the opposition leader, then you go into a campaign, then you return back as the opposition leader, sort of that push pull of having to be opposed to the government, then present yourself as an alternative, then to be opposed to the government. It's really a challenging sort of back and forth that you have to do in politics, and it's a hard thing to pull off. And Pierre Poilievre is trying to pull it off as best he can, but it's a tough dynamic. Second thing I would say, by the way, I know it's part of the narrative about the last election campaign. They say Pierre Poilievre blew a 20-point lead. No, Pierre Poilievre had a 20-point lead over Justin Trudeau, but when Mark Carney came in, everything got reset. And Mark Carney changed the dynamic. Donald Trump set the stage for there to be a new opportunity for leadership in this country. And Mark Carney, to his credit, took that opportunity and he pivoted away from Justin Trudeau. He got rid of the
I'm glad he's bringing this up, because the average Canadian's not going to see my videos. They're going to see this stuff. And this is the only time they're ever going to get this message.
Carbon tax. He put in place sort of a broad coalition of Canadians who wanted to sort of rally together and fight against Donald Trump and have a sort of this pan-Canadian view, which is why he's reached out and had a good partnership with Premier Ford. He's had a good relationship with Danielle Smith recently on the MOU on building an energy pipeline out to the west coast of Canada. He's demonstrated sort of this broad reach that has had a lot of appeal to a lot of Canadians that ordinarily wouldn't vote Liberal. And so Pierre Poilievre has to fight against that as well. So he's got to Pierre has a very tough job to do, right? Of being an effective opposition leader, while at the same time trying to reserve the Canadians' judgment against him, to have an open mind to support him as being an alternative to Mark Carney. So it's
Carney reaching out to Doug Ford and all these premiers. It looks good. That's what it is. It's optics. If we look what Carney's actually got done, it's almost nothing. The big UAE deal, that's not a deal. It's a commitment, a promise. Mobilizing Canada's pension funds, $2 trillion. Somehow, I don't think that's going to be benefiting Canada. An update too, I did email the Commissioner office in Ontario requesting a list of Doug Ford's assets, and of course, they did not reply. I will update you if they ever do reply, but I highly doubt they won't even dignify me with a response. Now, bouncing over to this panel here, they bring on Nick Nanos and this guy from La Presse and Judy Trin, but more importantly, let's focus on Nick Nanos here because I came across something very interesting yesterday.
I think for most of us, what defined the politics of last year was what happened in the thing that you do, which is the most massive swing in public opinion polling nationally I've ever seen. Does that define it for you?
Oh, you mean the deathbed resurrection of the Liberals? I think we've got to call it for what it was. Because a year ago,
I mean, after just watching what I just showed you, it's like, yeah, it swung, but it wasn't swinging as they're suggesting here. It's not like Carney had really bad numbers and now they're really good. Trudeau left and then the whole system neutralized. It went back to zero. That is the swing. So yeah, Trudeau left and then people had confidence voting Liberal again because they disliked Trudeau so much. It's not because Carney did something and suddenly he became popular and everyone liked him.
Think of it this way, Vashi. A year ago this week, the Liberals were in the 20s. Justin Trudeau was the leader of the Liberal Party. They were 14 points lower than they were today, and everyone had written them off. And, fast forward now, the Liberals are still in power. Mark Carney is the new leader of the Liberals and the Prime Minister. And Pierre Poilievre, his polling numbers were pretty good a year ago, but his personal numbers have been diminishing over time. So it's been a complete reversal of fortune from a ballot perspective.
Do you see...
Oh, really? Here we've got some new polling data from Nick Nanos. If Poilievre's numbers were so bad, then why is he nearly tied here on Nick Nanos' liberal-leaning polling data? It's tied on liaison strategies. He's leading in that other poll from Main Street Research, who was the most accurate in the last election. Now, while we're talking about Nick Nanos, you're not going to believe this. So I watch television maybe 20 minutes every other day just to do some stretches on the couch. I turn on the TV and what do I see? They're giving out Order of Canada pins here. And look who's getting an Order of Canada pin. You see that? It's Nick Nanos of Nanos Research.
Nick Nanos is a market and public opinion research leader. Nanos Research's founder is a trusted advisor to media and industry and a champion of public engagement in the democratic process. He has also provided leadership to Carleton University, the Canadian Research Insights Council, and the Marketing Research and Intelligence Association.
That's some pretty wild body language. He's not exactly looking super proud there.
Your Excellency, Mr. Nanos.
Mary Simon's useless. $365,000 a year, and this is what she does. He's the only one who got a hug. So I've been watching this for a few minutes and there's a bunch of professors and women moving women's rights forward, or professors with new innovations. One was a construction guy. Nick Nanos there was the only one to get a hug. So my question is now, why did Nick Nanos deserve an Order of Canada pin? What has he done that's so remarkable? He ran some polls with a lot of government money. Why does that warrant an Order of Canada pin? So the next lady after Nick Nanos was some lady tied to the UN, and now they've got
Susan Blight and Hayden King are the creators of the Ojima Mikana Project, an initiative that seeks to restore the names of Toronto's streets, trails, and paths to Anishinaabe, aiming to assert Indigenous presence across Anishinaabe territory. They expanded their project to update billboards and signage around and beyond Toronto.
Apparently they give out these Order of Canada pins to basically anyone. All that's doing is erasing heritage and costing taxpayers money. They want to name new things or new roads or new buildings after First Nations by all means, but renaming squares and places, locations, streets, like they did in Vancouver there, where no one can spell it now, it's causing havoc and it costs a lot of money. And First Nations there got $20,000 for consultation on renaming the street. It's wasting taxpayer money.